What would you do if the holiest place on earth, the place where you're supposed to feel safest, suddenly echoed with gunfire? Most of us can't even imagine it. But in 1979, it happened. Gunshots inside the Kaaba. And here's the thing. When people first hear this story, the reaction is almost always the same. They're stunned. How could this happen, and so recently? Some say, I've never even heard about this. Others have lived their whole lives as Muslims and still never knew the Mecca was once under siege. And then there are those who grew up in its shadow, hearing fragments from elders who saw it, but never the full truth. It's strange, isn't it? An event this huge, the Grand Mosque itself, stormed less than 50 years ago. And yet for many, it's as if history quietly placed a curtain over it, not erased, just forgotten. You see, on a morning like any other in Mecca, pilgrims were doing what they've done for over 1,000 years, circling the Kaaba, praying Fajr, hearts full, souls calm. And then, out of nowhere, chaos. A group walked in with coffins, but the coffins didn't hold bodies. They held rifles. They claimed the Mahdi had come. They declared it between the Black Stone and Maqam Ibrahim. And then, the announcement began. A voice condemning the rulers, denouncing corruption, warning that the signs of the last day were unfolding before their eyes. He reminded the people of the Prophet's words, that every 100 years, a mujaddid, a renewer of the faith, would arise. He spoke of the hadith about the Mahdi, the one destined to appear when the world was drowning in injustice and evil. And then his words struck the crowd like thunder. O Muslims, this is your Mahdi. Give him your bayah, your oath of allegiance. And with that, they seized the most sacred space on earth. But not everyone inside was taken hostage. The Imam of the Mecca himself immediately recognized what was happening. This wasn't prophecy, it was fanaticism. Amid the chaos, he blended into the crowd, avoiding the eyes of the gunmen. Disguised in a hijab and abaya, he slipped out of the mosque, and once free, he became the most vital witness. He told the authorities what he had seen, who these men were, what weapons they carried, how they had fortified the haram from within. At first, people froze. Is this real? Is this a test? Some tried to run, others stayed, trapped between worship and fear. Now here's the part we don't often talk about. For the Saudi rulers, this wasn't just about security. It was about Sharia. It was about the sanctity of the haram. How do you fight where fighting is forbidden? Days turned into a siege. The insurgents took the minarets. They turned underground chambers into bunkers, and the rules of the sacred space became the very weapon that kept them there. The kingdom tried, and failed, to take it back quickly, because this wasn't a normal battlefield. And outside the mosque, rumors exploded. People whispered about foreign plots. Fingers pointed at Iran and the West. Rumors raced across the Muslim world. The United States quickly blamed Iran. Fresh from its revolution, Iran pointed back, accusing America and the Zionists. And on the streets, protests and riots erupted in Turkey, in Bangladesh, in the UAE, in Pakistan and Libya. Angry crowds stormed American embassies. Buildings were set ablaze. The haram was under siege, and the whole ummah was burning with it. A crisis in the haram shakes the entire ummah. Let's step back for a second. Who was behind this? The face of it was Juhayman al-Otaibi, a preacher, charismatic, angry at the rapid modernization of Saudi life. But Juhayman's story didn't start with him. His grandfather, Sultan bin Bajad al-Otaibi, had once been a key figure in uniting Saudi Arabia. He fought alongside the rulers, but later clashed with them. Why? Because as the new kingdom grew closer to the British, and as the king chose diplomacy over expansion, Sultan saw it as betrayal. He wanted Saudi power to stretch into Jordan, Iraq, and Kuwait. To him, anything less, and any dealings with outsiders, was sinful. His rebellion failed. He was arrested. But his fire, his defiance, left a mark on his family. And decades later, Juhayman carried that same spirit. Only now, in the heart of Mecca, he found someone whose name, lineage, and look matched prophecies of the Mahdi. Muhammad Abdullah al-Qahtani, and they built a narrative. The Mahdi is here. The corrupt order must fall. You see, the Mahdi isn't just a name. He's an important figure in Islamic belief, central to the prophecy of the end times. Traditions describe his arrival as a moment when society is in turmoil, when moral values are crumbling, when respect for God is fading. And Juhayman tapped into that expectation. It wasn't even the first time in history someone had claimed the title. In the late 1800s, across the deserts of Sudan, a man named Muhammad Ahmad declared himself the Mahdi. He rose against Egyptian rule, fought the British, and his followers believed he had come to cleanse the world of corruption. That conflict became known as the Mahdist Wars. So when Juhayman stood in front of the Kaaba and proclaimed, "This is the Mahdi," it wasn't just shocking. It was tapping into centuries of prophecy, fear, and hope. It was the perfect storm. The Iranian Revolution had just happened. The region was unsettled, and when people are unsettled, they look for certainty, even if it's dressed in extremism. Inside, the haram had changed. It wasn't the sanctuary it had been. It was now a prison for the worshippers trapped inside, families separated, children crying, the Kaaba, surrounded by fear, the holiest place on earth, held hostage. And here's where it gets even heavier. For the scholars in Saudi Arabia, this wasn't just a political problem, it was a fiqh problem. Could they even use weapons in the haram? Was it permissible? They searched for rulings, they debated, they hesitated, and all the while, the siege dragged on. And inside, morale was beginning to shift. Al-Qahtani, the man they believed was the Mahdi, carried himself as if he could not be killed. To inspire his followers, he stepped out into the open battlefield. Bullets tore through his clothes, yet somehow he walked away alive. To his men, it looked like a miracle. But miracles do not last forever. His luck soon ran out, and he was killed. The Mahdi was dead. Many of his followers saw it happen with their own eyes, and in that moment, their faith shattered. The will to fight began to crumble. Eventually, the kingdom made a decision that would change the course of events. In desperation, Saudi Arabia turned to outside help. France's GING, one of the world's most elite counter-terrorism units. But that created a new problem. Non-Muslims are not allowed in Mecca, especially not inside the Grand Mosque. So how did they do it? Different stories exist. Some say the French officers were made to recite the Shahada and convert before entering. Others say they never set foot inside. Instead, they trained Saudi forces outside the city, handing them the playbook for how to end the siege. Whichever version is true, the plan they developed was brutal and direct. Holes were drilled into the underground chambers where the rebels were hiding. Gas was pumped in, flushing them out. When they stumbled to the surface, grenades and tear gas awaited them. Snipers picked off the rest. But the fight was darker than most people ever heard. Some reports say the basements were flooded with water, and then live electric wires were thrown in. Others recall burning tires rolled into the tunnels, choking the air with smoke. Whether every detail is true or not, what is clear is that the assault was merciless. Hostages died, rebels died, and finally, after 2 weeks of blood and fire, the Grand Mosque was retaken. But it came at a cost. Lives were lost. Hostages suffered. Victory doesn't always feel like victory. After several more weeks of relentless fighting, the rebels finally surrendered. Juhayman, along with around 60 of his followers, gave themselves up to the Saudi Arabian army. The aftermath was grim. Among those executed were 41 Saudis, 10 Egyptians, 7 Yemenis, 3 Kuwaitis, 1 Iraqi, and 1 Sudanese man. There were also reportedly 2 African Americans, though their names were never made public. It's believed they, like many others, were sent to prison before the executions. The siege at the Grand Mosque in Mecca had finally ended. The Saudi authorities had successfully crushed the uprising. Those found guilty were tried in secret, and later publicly executed in 8 different cities across Saudi Arabia. In the years that followed, Saudi Arabia changed. The leadership doubled down on religious legitimacy. Public life became more conservative. Curricula shifted, gender segregation tightened, entertainment was curtailed, and in a twist of irony, some of the demands of the rebels were actually implemented. Not because the rebels won, but because the state wanted to prevent another shock like this. Fear rewrote the rules, and so the legacy of that morning still echoes. It showed the world that even the most sacred space can be turned into a battlefield. It showed how faith, politics, and fear can collide and reshape a nation for decades. Pause. Breathe. History doesn't just live in books. Sometimes it lives in the way a people pray, in the laws they live by, in the silence they keep. One sunrise, one siege, a nation changed. May Allah protect His house, and may He protect our hearts from turning His gifts into weapons. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.